Hello, everybody. Mike Shredder here from Shred's Takes. I'm here with another Columbia grad student fellow friend of mine, Graham O'Brien, Kenyon Lacrosse player, 3-year captain. Also did many different things like a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at Kenyon as well. And he went to Deerfield Academy, which a bunch of my friends went to, and he knows a couple of my buddies who played lacrosse there. So obviously has a great track record of lacrosse, and now he's at Columbia with me studying sports management. So, Graham, thank you for coming on to the podcast. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this.
Absolutely. So let's get it started. Again, you played lacrosse your entire life. I feel like growing up in Maryland, that's a big sport to get into. But what was it for you that really got you involved in the sport and wanting to pursue it at a young age and eventually going to Deerfield?
Yeah, so funny enough, I initially started playing baseball. My dad was a baseball player in college, so he was my t-ball coach, and I liked the sport, but growing up in Maryland, like you said, it seems like everyone has a lacrosse stick in their hand since they were born. So I noticed that all of my friends were playing lacrosse. So I was a little behind the eight ball in terms of getting into lacrosse. I guess at like when you look at the age group of my area. So I started playing when I was around 10 or 11. Um, I remember one of my first tryouts. For my rec team, I tried out as a midi because I was pretty fast, right? But I soon quickly found out that I have no natural scoring ability whatsoever. So I moved to defense, and it kind of fell in love with it. And I guess what led me to Deerfield is, so I went to Gilman, which is a all boys private school in Baltimore. And I was there from K till eighth grade, and around seventh, eighth grade, I knew I wanted to go to boarding school. Kind of, separate even from lacrosse. It was just, and not that there was anything wrong with Gilman. I just, boarding school is a different experience, right? And I have an older sister who's 6 years older than me, and I remember she begged my parents to let her go to boarding schools, and my parents never let her do it. And when it was time for me to go to high school, my parents were like, "Hey, like, if you're interested, would you want to go to boarding school?" So long story short, I toured a couple schools, got into Deerfield, and went to Deerfield, and just continued lacrosse from there.
Talk about the experience at Deerfield. Again, for those who don't know, right? Incredible lacrosse program. You play against some of the top end talent in the country, not just in the Northeast area. Talk about that experience because you're competing against not just good teams, obviously in the league, but even with your own group, you're competing against guys who are playing not just at a high end D3 level like a Kenyon, but high end Division 1 schools also for lacrosse. And just kind of talk about that experience and how that helped you develop the skills you needed to be able to play at the college level and develop just your sense of confidence in going through that entire journey.
Yeah, for sure. I would say definitely my first couple years, my freshman sophomore year playing at Deerfield, was pretty humbling, right? Because not that I was a great lacrosse player, I definitely thought I was better than I was, and just being being in an environment kind of where everyone is a great player. Like you said, some of the practices were probably harder than arguably a lot of the games that we played. I think in my junior year, I think my team had around 22 D1, D3 commits that were playing. So I would say that the experience, just being on a team that was very similar to the culture of like my college team at Kenyon, that definitely helped me. And it also, one thing I definitely learned playing at Deerfield was just being patient, right? Because a lot of times, similar to a lot of other boarding schools, Deerfield will bring in postgraduates. So who are basically guys who graduated high school but are taking a year before they go to college. And a lot of these guys are often, going to elite programs like Notre Dame, Duke, whatnot. So as a junior and senior, often, you'll see like you don't, your spot's never guaranteed, which is an important lesson that I learned, and it kind of gave me a different perspective on how I approach practice every day, how I approach tryouts. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. Love the lacrosse team, and definitely, put me in a great position heading in as a freshman at Kenyon.
So how did you get recruited to Kenyon? How did that recruiting process work? Was it earlier? Because I know with some lacrosse experiences, you hear guys that are getting recruited really early on. Or was it for you, was it a little bit later in the process? And when you decided Kenyon was a school, what about Kenyon made that fit seem seamless for you when you wanted to go play lacrosse there?
Yeah, so I would probably say my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I thought, I was a Division I lacrosse player, and I think that was part of the lacrosse culture in Baltimore growing up. Every kid thinks that they're the next best thing, and that they're going to be playing at like Duke, whatnot. And I quickly learned that first, I don't know if I was the player I exactly envisioned, but also I didn't know if I wanted that for myself. I knew junior senior year I wanted to go to a small school. And around my junior summer was when the D3 recruiting started to pick up, and I was looking at some NESCACs, and then Kenyon was like the only school in Ohio, or the only non-East Coast school that I was talking to, and I really liked the coach, Coach Mazzardi. I remember taking a visit with my dad and just being able to see myself at that school. And nothing was wrong with the NESCACs out of the ones that I was looking at. It was just that it was kind of, similar to the same reason why I went to boarding school, as a new experience, right? And Ohio was a new experience for me. And even though we do have a lot of kids on the East Coast that on my Kenyon team, it was still just putting myself, in a different environment and kind of seeing what I can do with it. So that's kind of how I felt, how everything aligned with Kenyon. And it was also a program where I knew I could, play immediately. And that's something that, I wanted for myself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of it, right? You want to go where you can fit into the process. I think something that I found interesting though, when just kind of doing some research about just your career, was you being a captain for 3 years.
Yeah.
And that I was only a captain for one at Amherst. And even just that, that takes a lot of courage, trust from your teammates, trust from your coaches to be able to do that. You talked about, trying to take on new experiences. That's why you went to Deerfield. That's why you went to Kenyon. Talk about the new experience. You're going into the sophomore and you get put in the position of being a captain. And then you do that junior and senior year, which probably were more of an easier transition. But talk about, like, when you're an underclassman having to have that leadership role, and what did it, and maybe talk about that, plus also just maybe if it evolved or changed as you went across your career, and how that has maybe helped you with the different stuff you're doing with jobs in Columbia.
Yeah. So I guess going back to that time, right? So my sophomore year, as we all know, COVID was still a very big part. Flashing back to my freshman year, we only got through 6 games of our season before we got sent home. And then, thankfully, my sophomore year, Kenyon was. I know, like you at Amherst, they did. I don't know if they allowed everyone back, but for the fall semester of my sophomore year, freshmen and sophomores were allowed back. So we did our normal fall ball with freshmen and sophomores. And then initially it was only supposed to be juniors and seniors my spring semester. And we didn't even know if we were going to have a season at that point, right? So Kenyon finally decided that it was going to be sophomore, juniors, and seniors, and it turned out we did have a season. And I guess I was nominated captain by my teammates, which that was probably definitely one of my proudest moments of my career, especially with how tough that year was. Right, like kids were testing, like on all college campuses, kids were testing positive left and right. So a lot of times we would be holding our breath Saturday morning to see if we were going to be even playing the game in 2 hours. So I think that the amount of adversity that we faced as a team, mainly off the field, was it was a lot to get through, and so that was probably like one of the big moments of my career. And I would say that year, I was one of 4 captains, so I was a sophomore, and then two guys were juniors and 2 guys were seniors. So that year, even though I was a captain, I took a way more of an observant role. I wasn't as vocal because I was still, this was my second year of college, haven't even played 10 games of my collegiate career, right? and I'm in a leadership position. So I took kind of a backseat role and was pretty observant. Obviously, I tried to, set a good example and whatnot. But I would say more so my junior and senior year was where I, took more of a vocal role in terms of, being the normal sense of, what a captain embodies. And I would say a lot of my confidence came from my class, like the kids in my grade. We still to this day are very close. And I remember my when sophomore year when it was announced that I was captain, all 11 or 12 of them texted me, wished me congratulations, and I think that's what led to our successful season my senior year. Just how close and tight knit we were as a group. And I mean, it might be cliche to say, but it didn't really feel like there was a captain or anything like that my senior year. It was just that we led as a unit. Um, and then kind of talking about how that transitioned to my internships and other um, career opportunities that I've had so far. I would say the biggest thing is it taught me to be a lot more aware, right? And being flexible. Going back to the COVID year, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know if we were going to wake up one day and like our starting goalie had COVID, right? Couldn't play. Like then what? So we gotta. So they basically it taught me a lot of being able to adapt on the fly and not dwell on things that you can't control. And it's way easier said than done. Takes a lot of um, patience, but that's one of the biggest lessons that I still carry with me today.
So you originally started out with your career path in politics. You were
Mm.
working for Representative Anthony Brown, and
Yeah.
then you decided to go in the sports path. Talk about the transition, about what decided, because I know you're a poli sci bachelor's of arts student or bachelor's of science, maybe, excuse me, at
Mhm.
Kenyon, and then you say, okay, I'm going to go in this path of helping out Representative Brown in Maryland. But then now I'm saying, okay, I'm going to go work in sports and entertainment for a consulting office and then go to Columbia, right? What was the transition for you? Because I could kind of see maybe where it goes, but that for someone maybe in the outside looking in who doesn't know you as person as I do,
Yeah.
that would be, where did that go, right? So talk a little bit about kind of the transition from that to saying, I want to go pursue a sports management degree and work in sports.
Yeah, good question. So as you mentioned, political science major, I thought I wanted to work in the government. So I applied for this internship with a local congressman, Anthony Brown, who's now currently the Attorney General of Maryland. But at the time, he was a member of the House, and so I worked for him my junior year's summer. And it was a really interesting time. I was there during the January 6th committee hearings as well as the Roe v. Wade ruling. And a lot of what I did was, work a lot with constituents, answering phone calls, but I also kind of worked on the legislative side. The Congressman Brown was a member of the House and Armed Services Committee, so he had a lot of bills. So I worked with bills in term that advocated for more HBCU funding and things like that. And I guess what I really enjoyed about that part was being able to work with people in terms of working with other legislative staff members, a part of Congressman Brown's office, but as well as like other members of other offices that were trying to get signatures or work with on some sort of policy. But I kind of realized that I don't know if politics was for me. It was it was very entertaining and there's a lot of stuff going on, but at the same time, I didn't feel like a place where you know, it didn't feel like a place where I could make like an impact, right? And I mean, outside of politics itself, but the government moves pretty slowly sometimes, right? And so I kind of stayed away from that. I wouldn't say I was set on sports at that time, but I kind of realized that I don't know if working on the hill was something I wanted to do. And then come my senior fall, right? I'm sure you know, like all of my friends were getting jobs and figuring out what they were going to do. And I always knew I had a passion for sports, but I never knew it, like I never thought that, that was a place where I could work, right? Because I feel like everyone's like, oh, I like sports, but I don't know if I could, ever work there. And so I had a lot of talks with my parents, and they were like, give it a shot. And, I did. And I went on LinkedIn, kind of did some more research, found things that I could potentially be interested in. And I reached out to an alum, a Deerfield alum, who owns a sports consulting company, which is currently the company that I'm working at right now. And he was a great mentor. He's also a professor at the Northwestern Sports Management School. So he was his name's Scott Kirkpatrick, and so he was a great mentor. He kind of told me what to expect in sports management programs, and we talked about if that was something I'd be interested in, and it was, and I've really enjoyed working for his consulting agency, and it's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot. I'm very thankful.
So talk a little bit about now what you're trying to get out of Columbia, right? And everyone's experience is different, right? It's also fair to say maybe I don't know and
Yeah,
still trying to figure out it on the way because I've had plenty of those answers when I've talked to people. But I think when people go into a program like this, right, it's trying to find what passions speak to you. And I think that for me, based on my first semester experience, there's a lot of things that are very interesting about the realm of sports.
yeah,
You've told me that you're very interested in kind of what you're doing now, sports consulting and event kind of operations
yeah.
management, stuff like that. Talk about what maybe at Columbia or even before then got you excited about that possibility. Was it the fact that you did politics in your background and that kind of led to this passion, or was it something you just kind of found from doing the work you did with Sean Kirkpatrick, or doing work in your classes that you're able to kind of find that passion?
Yeah, I would say it probably developed over time. I would say I've always been, even back to sports, right? Like I've always been someone who's valued the relationships I've had with people and being able to form those connections. And I think that's, was one of the things I did like about politics and working on the Hill that summer, was being able to, like I said, work with other people in terms of in finding one common goal, which is essentially what being on any sports team is, right? Be like working together and finding a common goal. And then tying that back into Columbia and working in sports, it's kind of the same thing in terms of, like, obviously it's the team environment, and one and I would say what I do like working with the consulting agency right now is a lot of work that we do is represent Olympic and Paralympic athletes, and so we advise them on terms of brand deals as well as speaking engagements and things like that. So that just kind of being like just the team aspect of that, and working together and fostering those relationships is probably something that I've always been interested in, but I've kind of been more self-aware and understanding that that's an area which I think I thrive in, and kind of make the impact that I was hoping to make, that I want to make.
Yeah, before I get into just asking how your first semester was that a big reason why you took a role in like diversity, equity, and inclusion at Kenyon? Was the idea of trying to make an impact, use your platform as an athlete to make change? Because I know that that's some reason why people did that. It's some reason why people do like at Amherst, the basketball teams helped out like with like a tutoring program in the Amherst community. Was that a reason you did that for a bunch of years? Was it to create that change that you wanted to see? And do you think sports is a good vehicle for that?
Oh yeah, 100%. And you hit the nail right on the head. Like that was a position that I was kind of surprised my college didn't have, before I was there. And I'm very close with the athletic director and the assistant athletic director at the school, and as well as our student athletic advisory committee, which I'm sure you had at Amherst. So we were able to make that position. But also, one thing that I'm super proud that we did was implement some sort of curriculum that each team had to, follow or discuss throughout the year. And especially, I was proud that the lacrosse team did it right, because even though lacrosse is getting better, lacrosse is not historically is not a diverse sport. And that was something that, I had a firsthand experience of, growing up. I I felt different, as a kid. Like there weren't kids that were like me, and not a lot of the times, but in some instances, there were things that were said that should never be said. And I think that it's important to institute this type of curriculum, and have like that type of environment. And so that was one of the roles I had as the DEI chair. But so yeah, and I think definitely sports is a great vehicle to just to share this message, right? Because I like going back to like the close knit relationships and just the team environment. So we had our team personally had a lot of great um, they were hard at times, but I had a lot of great discussions about the curriculum, and I mean strengthened us all together as a whole. So
Yeah, no, I mean that's incredible stuff, and especially just because I think that what you're doing is you're implementing what you actually want to see get done at the university level, and then now you're trying to see how you can do that within a sports realm, which is awesome. So I think that's keep doing that. That's incredible stuff. But I think the one thing I want to just ask, and this is kind of just a just caveat question or a side question, I guess,
no.
is just how was your first semester at Columbia? How did you enjoy the community? How did you enjoy the classes you took? And I like to ask a lot of my friends that now who went through the first semester with me, but you talk a little bit about kind of your first semester experience?
Yeah, I mean it was great. I would say the biggest adjustment was obviously from living in Ohio to from for 4 years is living in New York. It's definitely a change of scenery. But classes have gone well. Super impressed with the experience and the knowledge that our teachers have. I think that at the graduate school level, I mean the teachers are there because they truly enjoy what they're doing and are truly wanting to help, right? I'm sure it's the same for you, but all my classes, my teachers are constantly like, hey, like if you want advice, or if they know someone that they could reach out to help you with your career, like the teachers have been great about that. And obviously meeting great guys like you, and Andrew and stuff, and I enjoy our subway rides back home. So yeah, semester's been great. It went by very quick, but looking forward to getting the spring started, and just keeping everything going.
I think the one thing though, and maybe you could jump on this, is just how impressive a lot of these students are. They come in not just like our class, but even just like the older classes maybe that are graduating or have one more semester left, and it's just talking about their experiences, their knowledge of sports in different areas based on their experiences. Yeah, I'm a sports media guy. You work in sports consulting, but then like the experiences still can tie up together, and I think that's something that I found important. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I know we've talked about this, but especially like the data side, right? Like data in sports is a huge, a huge sector. And I remember both of us in the Excel boot camp, kind of scratching our heads, real like asking what the heck's going on. But a lot of people in the program, have a really good background in that stuff. So I think that's another cool thing, just being able to learn so much, not only from your teachers but also your classmates. So that's another thing that I've really benefited from in the program.
To cap things off here, what's the thing you're most looking forward to about the second semester, about 2024? What are you most looking forward to?
Good question. Most looking forward to probably just being able to like fully settle in, realize this is my life, this is my routine, and like this is the career path that I'm heading down. Because I think a thing I was worried about heading into Columbia was like it's an Ivy League school. How's everything going to go, right? I didn't know that much about. I still have a lot to learn, but heading in, I didn't really know anything about the sports industry. And so a lot of that was just like, oh, like, how am I going to fare? How's everything going to go? But, this first semester, I mean, it was hard, right? But it wasn't impossible. We both got through it, and everything turned out all right. So just kind of being able to, take a deep breath and, maximize program.
Exactly. I think that's something that I think is incredibly important to think about. Again, I mean, I'm commuting in, but even the adjustment, just commuting in to going to an Ivy League school, even from, look, we both went to very high-end liberal arts schools academically, but it's an adjustment. You're going into a big city, you're learning an industry that even if you know sports, it's like the business of it. So everything's going to be very new and different for a lot of students going in. But again, I think the big thing that I've gathered from talking to you is just like we're both like enjoying the experience, I think,
Yeah,
so far.
100%.
Um, Absolutely. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the pod. This was so much fun.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know a good amount of this, even though I've talked to you for an extensive amount of time in the program. So I appreciate you sharing your story about just how your lacrosse career and your career, even working in politics, now led to your sports career now and your sports journey at Columbia. So I always appreciate talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you as when we start classes up in a couple of weeks. So thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm glad we did this. This was very cool. Yeah, thank you.
For everybody listening, I'm Mike Shredder. This is Shred Stakes here with Graham O'Brien, former Kenyon lacrosse player and current Columbia Mass students with me this semester and going through this year. So for everybody, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.